Hi everyone, so I'm going to do a beach scene today, a beach scene with a bit of a difference because it's New Year, try something new. So I'm going to bring in a couple of little bits. So I'm going to use some candle wax, so that's going to be something new. I'm going to use some gouache in the foreground, so that's going to be something new. And a little bit of printing as well, so do stay tuned to see all of this. I'll pop this up big on screen so you get to screenshot and print that out if you want to. There is a little bit of drawing, not too much. Horizon line, a little hillside, where the water's coming and where the white of the water is, a little bit roughly where the blue is, and the line of foliage. So again, I'll pop this up big on screen so you can print that out if you screenshot and print that out if you want to. So as we go through, I'll talk through what I'm using. I have a watercolour block. This is a Saunders Waterford rough paper. It's 12 by 9, a great size for the camera. So off we go. So I'm going to come on with my wash brush. We're going to start with the sky. So this is a squirrel mop. It's a pointed mop and it's quite good for water and for getting into little bits because it's got a point. So I want to make sure that I am covering the whole of the sky, coming down to the horizon line, just up to the hillside. I want a nice sheen on here, no dull patches. And then I'm going to come to around number 10. I've loaded that with water and I'm dipping straight into my cobalt blue. So this is a nice wispy sky today. So I'm going to leave lots of wisps of white. So it's about stroking the colour on. Not having too much on the brush. If you're worried, dab some off on some kitchen towel. Take a bit darker up towards the top. So that's neat. That was neat cobalt blue. I've also got a little dab of cerulean blue here. This is a little bit lighter. I'm going to bring that in towards the bottom. So this is still with my round number 10. So I've had a little dab with a dab of water off my round number 10 in there. So not much water in there again, because you want it to stay put. Don't want it to move too much. What I also want you to do with the cerulean is to blend through. So what you don't want is two colours, one at the top, one at the bottom. You want a bit of a blend. So the cerulean is semi-opaque, so it will come through and push through the Prussian blue and work really nicely. Just get that bit down there. Okay, so I've got a lovely wispy sky started there. I'm going to come now down to the bottom area of the beach. Just letting that sky settle. So I'm coming to the water. It doesn't matter that I'm coming over the foliage. And I'm coming over a little bit of water that's on the beach as well. So I'm just getting the whole of this base area nice and wet. So still with my round number 10. I'm going to come in to a little bit of the cobalt blue. So I'm painting the cobalt blue where there might be water on the beach. It will become apparent why I've done this in a minute. So load my brush up. This is raw sienna. So a neat blob of raw sienna on my palette. I'm just going to place some of this in. I'm going to bring it up to the cobalt blue, but not blend through. So it's going to start to give me a bit of a base. If it comes on, it's a bit lumpy, you just want a bit more water in there. And you're going to touch up to the cobalt blue. Because I'm staying flat, these are both transparents. and I'm not blending through, it should stay put and not go green. Take a little bit into there. If it did happen to go green, because that can happen, I've got some rose madder here on my palette. I'd pick up a little bit of that. In fact, I'll pick up some of this and take it through now anyway. And anywhere where it looked like it was going a little bit green, I'd take a bit of the rose through so that it started to make it look grey. So just tiny dabs of that rose madder. It's just warming up the beach area really. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I'm going to come onto the water with a little bit of water. So what I'm going to do is avoid those lines as to where I've put the white, but I'm just going to take a little bit of water on. So I'm not going to get it everywhere, but then I'm going to work quite quickly. So I have got here some cerulean blue, and this is on my round number 10. You'll see where I will hit water and then not hit water. So where I've got these bits of white that I want to show, I'm going to come round and just create a bobbly edge. So I'm leaving a gap. This is with the cerulean blue and my round number 10, and I'm working really quite quickly. What I don't want is for this to dry too quickly. I've got a little, I can leave a little bit down at the bottom. You can leave a little bit of a light line on the horizon as well. You want to get this first layer on nice and quick. I'm going to swap down to a number 6 round now. And I'm going to come in with a little bit of the cobalt blue. So again, I've still got plenty of time. So I'm just getting a little bit of a different tone in here now. So I can come underneath these bobbly areas. Just keep loading your brush up with a bit of water. And that darker area underneath the bobbly bit of the wave will help to give it a sense of shadow and that it's coming in. If I just take a dab of the cobalt blue and then I've got a dab of burnt sienna here, I want to make a bit of a grey, and I can just whiz some of that through as well. Just neaten any lines. It doesn't matter if you come over your cliffside. You can always come back into this later to add more shadow. Just look to check that there isn't any watermarks happening. And if there's a watermark, you're just going to take an extra little bit of paint through. Not water. Water will make it worse, but an extra little bit of paint will just stop that happening. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I'm going to come in now to this hillside. So this is with my round number 6. I'm going to take on a little bit of water. And then I've got some green here. Any green will do. This is nice and vibrant. Look, I think this is called permanent green. And I'm just going to add a little bit of brown. If you haven't got a green, you could mix up something with blue and yellow to make a green. But this has just made this much more natural looking from vibrant. And I'm going to come in and create this bank just here. Rinse my brush out. I'm going to take a little bit of the blue, a little bit of the burnt sienna, and I'm making a nice thick grey. And I'm just going to bring a little bit of that in. So there's some foliage and some bits of rock. We're just doing a bit of both really. Get this a bit darker down here with the grey. So that's sitting nicely. If with a clean, damp brush, you then just pull a little bit of that paint out, you'll start to settle that into the water. I'm going to do it there as well. Just pull it out a little bit in a couple of places. Okay, so with that same grey, I'm going to run along this water's edge. So I'm leaving that little gap of white. This is going to give me a sense of shadow on the beach. Run a few little bits through. Make it wider this side, that gives you a real sense of perspective there. Going to take, this is a tea light, so I'm going to take some candle wax on where I want this blue to stay as water. Now this is all a little bit random. I'm using the flat and I'm using the texture, so the flat of the candle wax, rubbing it on, and I'm using the texture of the paper to catch. It needs to be dry when you're doing this, so don't go on any areas that are wet. I just want you to catch a few places and we'll hope. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Want a little bit more grey a minute. And we're just going to come in, just do a little bit more in the water. So if I come under each of these waves, so I'll start to give it a little bit more definition. Can even have a little bit under here. So this is all with my round number 6. Rinse that out. I've just dabbed into a bit of water. I'm just going to run my brush along, just touching that paint so that it softens in a little bit. So I've started to get a really nice wave there. And then towards the horizon, I'm going to do a few flatter, ripply waves. Again, rinse my brush, dab it into the water, and I'm going to come on the underside of each of these to soften in. So I'm just touching the paint but wetting further than it needs to go. So it's giving it a really nice, subtle effect. And I need to do something down here as well. I'm going to take a little bit more in and a little bit on the tops of those little bits of waves there. And then I'm going to dampen that in between. So I've got something happening there. That's settling really nicely. Okay, I'm just going to dry this off. Okay, so that's nicely dry and it's coming on really well. So what I'm going to do now is wet this bottom section of sand again. So this is a second layer. I'm being very careful as I do this so that I don't disturb any of the paint. It needs to be totally dry and warm to the touch if you're coming over with a second layer. I'm going to pick up my round number 10 and I'm dabbing into the raw sienna again. And what should happen now is this wax should resist. So we should start to see the blue of the water appear. So it's a really nice technique. You can see those little bits of blue water appearing now. In fact, if I zoom in, you'll be able to really see them. You can see that happening, and that wax resist happening nicely. I'll take a little bit more there, look, so you can see that. If I make that grey a little bit browner by taking in some more burnt sienna, this is going to work quite well on the beach. So you can see I can come around these patches. You see how I'm doing horizontal strokes. I want this to stay horizontal. So that it feels like it's a surface. If it starts to go too far, and this has gone quite far, I'm going to swap to a smaller brush. So I'll swap down to around number 6. It's because it's quite wet on the paper. And I'm just manipulating and moving what's there. So I'm keeping to that nice horizontal stroke. I'm just going to come back out so you can see that nicely now. I'm going to bring a little bit here. So I've got that bit of shadow there. I can also dab into a little bit of the rose madder and bring a bit of warmth in, especially towards the foreground, because that's going to help bring this forward. And as it settles, you won't see those little stripes. It'll just all add a little bit of warmth. Okay, so I'm going to come back to my round number 10 and this green. The green with a bit of the burnt sienna, because I want this to be quite a natural looking green. And I'm going to come in and start to create some foliage. So this is all still damp, and it's just about getting this first layer on. You'll see that I'm doing mainly upward strokes. So that I'm getting a nice base in here. Rinse this one out. I'm going to come back to my round number 6. So it's a bit more of the green, a bit more of the brown. I'm going to take a dab of the cobalt blue in, so this is going to make this a little bit darker. Then I can come over with a second layer. You just need to make sure you've got enough water on the brush that it's going to move the paint. You don't want it to be too thick. And this is going to start to add a little bit more depth. So you're going to have a lighter one and a darker one. And then I'm going to take a bit more blue in and a bit more brown in. And that's going to make that green darker again, so that I can come in again. This is all that same green, I'm just adding little bits. What you have got to be careful of is you don't come over your wax bit, because it's not going to cover those wax bits. So I just want to get a nice uneven line. I can dot some little bits in. I mean, this works perfectly well, but we are going to come on and do a little bit of printing with gouache over the top. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. With a little bit of that browny grey, and I've dipped my brush in, I'm just going to come through and create some more defined areas on the beach. So it's where wet could be, really. It's just not quite defined enough. If you can keep these strokes fairly horizontal or at a 45-degree angle, it will work much better. Be a bit more shadow here and a little bit around this patch here. So it's a little bit of that browny grey that I've got left. Luckily I've not quite mixed it all up into the green. And it's just enough to help define those edges. I'm going to bring a little bit, you want it to keep dipping your brush in so you're quite watery with it. I'm going to dip a little bit in there. So I'm pulling that a horizontal stroke, and that's just going to help define that sandy dry bit. Okay, so I have got some cadmium yellow gouache. If you don't have gouache, then don't worry. You can do this with a darker watercolour. Just to give you some different ideas, what I've got is some fern. You could use fern, you could use leaves, whatever you can find from out of the garden. I've picked fern because that is what I can see in the picture. I'm going to pull off a few little bits. And we'll do a little bit with watercolour and a little bit with gouache. So if I go into the green that I was using, in fact I'll just darken it up a little bit with blue just to make sure that it's definitely going to cover, and you're going to paint this on nice and thick. Paint that on, turn it over, place it where you want it to be and press it down. You're going to get a nice print effect. Just going to work lovely. So I'm going to take a few of these in. If it doesn't quite work, you don't worry, you carry on. Every single one will be different. Try to choose different angles when you're doing this, different ways. You could paint these in, but this is an easier way to do it, and it's all about trying something new. It always gives you great ideas as to what you can do going forward. I'm going to swap to do a different one now, and I'm going to try a little bit of the gouache. So gouache is opaque, so it should be able to bring on a little bit lighter effect. So I'm painting on, this is just with my round number 6. And I'll place this where it's a little bit darker. Press that down and we'll have a reveal. You can see me getting very messy doing this. I'll place one next to it. You've got to use it 3 times for it to work. Everything in 3s. So they're looking really pretty. If I wanted to darken that bit of gouache without using different colours, I could just use a bit of watercolour in there. So I'm mixing this up to get a different green. So I've taken a bit of cobalt blue into the cadmium yellow. I'm going to take that over the top. There we go. It's really effective. I'm going to do one higher up so it comes out and over. One here. And then we'll go back to a different one. Let's try a bigger one. So I've got a bigger one here. I'm going to add a little bit more blue in. I'm going to bring this in at the side again. Just press that down I'm getting very messy, but I don't mind that. Press that down here. So it's really nice and effective and random. In fact, even when it doesn't print fully, it's still really pretty. And I'm going to come through and add little bits. So you can do as much or as little of this as you like. I'm going to go with that way with that one. Random's always good. So I'm randomising it up by taking it a different direction. What I don't want you to do is to eliminate all of the softness that you've got. I'm going to take that one out of the way. If I just find my rigger, a little bit of water into this rest of this mix, I can just bring some little bits through. This starts to connect them all together. Just like a few grasses. To make a bit of a darker mix, the blue. So it's a little bit of blue, a little bit of green in here. It's just all about keeping it random. And that's looking really effective at the bottom. So I'll just dry this off. Okay, so I'm coming back to you before I've dried off to show you something, because I've blobbed up here and I've just started to lift it with a bit of water. These things happen to the best of us, and this is just a damp brush and a bit of a dab of kitchen towel. I'm lifting out a bit of light. So where it's blobbed on here, I'm just going to try to blend it in with a wet brush. So it's just knowing what to do. So that, because that's dry and I've blended, it's worked really nicely, and I've been able to lift out the bit that had gone into the sky. So I always pride myself on not hiding anything from you. So I've made a cock up and I fixed it. And there we go. So that's all finished with a random printing technique, some ideas on how to use wax resist, some lovely wet in wet washes. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share. I'll pop you a playlist here and another video here, and I'll see you next time.